When you think about the naval battles of World War II, you probably think mostly about Europe or the South Pacific, but more American ships were sunk just off the Gulf Coast by the Germans than were sunk by the Japanese at Pearl Harbor. And the one German submarine we managed to sink is still out there. In 1942, in the Gulf waters just off Mississippi and Louisiana, Germany began something called Operation Paukenschlag. This translates to Operation Drumbeat, and their objective? To disrupt as many cargo ships and oil ships coming to and from the Mississippi River as possible. And it was easy pickings for Germany. In fact, the operation was so successful that they crowned it Germany's second happy time. Because the towns along the Gulf Coast didn't do evening blackouts, the German submarines would simply wait until dark and then hunt ships as they passed between their periscopes and the lights along the coast. The ships would make perfect silhouettes, and therefore perfect targets. During the operation, the Germans sunk over 58 ships along the Mississippi and Louisiana coast, and they damaged at least 24 more. The U.S. government tried to keep this as quiet as possible so that Germany wouldn't realize just how successful their operation was just off the United States coastline. But eventually, the carnage became too much to hide. Like when a tanker called the Benjamin Brewster was torpedoed just off Grand Isle, Louisiana, taking the lives of 25 sailors and burning very visibly for 9 days. During all this time, the Germans operated in the Gulf with very little consequences, except for one time. A passenger ship called the Robert E. Lee was passing by the Mississippi coastline about 45 miles east of the Mississippi River. It was being escorted by a naval patrol ship when a periscope appeared in the water. The patrol ship tried to warn the Lee, but it was too late. A torpedo streaked through the water, making a direct hit on the Lee's engine room, and the ship sank within 15 minutes. But the patrol boat managed to get behind the U-boat whose periscope was still up. At the very last second, the periscope spun around, spotted them, and then dropped below the waters of the Gulf. It all happened so fast, and the patrol boat was so close that they could still see where the water was disturbed, and they could see the outline of the U-boat beneath them. So the patrol craft made multiple passes, dropping depth charges with each one before turning around and going to help rescue survivors from the Lee. The man in charge of the patrol ship, Captain Herbert Claudius, believed that he'd sunk the German U-boat because he stopped hearing sounds. But the Navy disagreed. They believed that the sub had escaped because they said the depth charges were set to go off too deep. But in 2001, we found the wreckage. And the most popular theory is that one of those depth charges was a lucky shot that landed directly on the deck of that submarine, and the explosion set off multiple torpedoes within the hull, immediately and instantly destroying the ship. Finally, in 2014, just 10 years ago, Captain Herbert Claudius was posthumously honored for bringing down the sub, a long-awaited ceremony finally commemorating the forgotten war that happened just off our Gulf Coast.